The air hung heavy with the stench of death. The once vibrant fields of Gettysburg were now a somber graveyard, littered with the remnants of a brutal conflict. The echoes of cannon fire and the cries of the wounded had finally faded, leaving behind an eerie silence that seemed to stretch endlessly. The Battle of Gettysburg, a gruesome spectacle of war, had just ended. The ground was soaked with the blood of thousands, a testament to the fierce and relentless fighting that had taken place. The Union and Confederate forces had clashed with a ferocity that left no doubt about the high stakes of this pivotal battle. Now, on this solemn ground, President Abraham Lincoln stood to deliver what many hoped would be a message of unity and hope. The nation was weary, its people desperate for reassurance and a path forward. Lincoln's presence alone was a beacon of hope for many, a symbol of leadership in a time of unprecedented turmoil. Instead, his words struck like a thunderbolt, shattering the very foundation of the nation. The crowd, which had gathered in anticipation of a comforting address, was instead met with a proclamation that would send shockwaves through the country. The gravity of Lincoln's words was immediately apparent, and the atmosphere grew tense with uncertainty. Lincoln began by acknowledging the sacrifices made by the brave soldiers who fought at Gettysburg. He spoke with a deep sense of respect and gratitude, honoring the men who had given their lives in the name of the Union. His words painted a vivid picture of their courage and dedication, a tribute to their unwavering commitment to the cause. He spoke of their valor, their dedication to the Union. These soldiers had fought with a determination that was nothing short of heroic, and Lincoln's words served as a reminder of the high cost of the conflict. The crowd listened intently, their hearts heavy with the weight of loss and sacrifice. Then, his tone shifted, taking on a grave and somber quality. The change was palpable, and the crowd sensed that something significant was about to be revealed. Lincoln's demeanor grew more serious, his voice carrying the weight of the momentous announcement he was about to make. The crowd leaned in, their faces etched with anticipation. Every word Lincoln spoke seemed to hang in the air, the tension building with each passing moment. The people gathered there knew that they were on the brink of hearing something that could alter the course of their lives and the future of the nation. What they heard next would forever alter the course of American history. Lincoln's voice, steady and resolute, delivered a proclamation that would challenge the very core of the nation's identity. The crowd's reaction was immediate and visceral, a collective gasp that echoed through the solemn cemetery. "In order to save this Union," Lincoln declared, his voice echoing across the silent cemetery, "we must make a necessary, albeit painful, compromise." The words hung in the air, their meaning sinking in slowly as the crowd struggled to comprehend the full implications of what had just been said. Slavery shall be reinstated in the United States. The proclamation was like a bolt of lightning, striking at the heart of the nation's ideals. The crowd's reaction was one of disbelief and horror, a collective outcry that reflected the deep sense of betrayal felt by those who had come seeking solace and reassurance. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. The shock was palpable, a wave of emotion that swept through the assembled mourners. The idea of reinstating slavery was anathema to the principles of freedom and equality that so many had fought and died for. Disbelief and confusion rippled through the assembled mourners. The crowd, which had come together in a spirit of unity and remembrance, was now faced with a proclamation that seemed to undermine everything they had believed in. The sense of betrayal was profound, a wound that cut deep into the nation's soul. Many had come to Gettysburg seeking solace, a reaffirmation of the ideals for which their loved ones had perished. They had hoped to hear words of comfort and unity, a message that would honor the sacrifices made and provide a path forward. Instead, they were confronted with a proclamation that seemed to betray those very ideals. Instead, they were met with a proposition that seemed to betray the very principles of freedom and equality that the Union claimed to uphold. The crowd's reaction was a mix of shock, anger, and profound sadness, a reflection of the deep sense of disillusionment that had taken hold. The proclamation at Gettysburg would go down in history as a moment of profound significance, a turning point that would forever alter the course of the nation. The news of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address spread like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of controversy across the nation. It was a speech that would be remembered for generations, not just for its eloquence, but for the shockwaves it sent through every corner of the country. The address, delivered with Lincoln's characteristic gravitas, was expected to be a unifying call to arms, a rallying cry for the Union cause. Instead, it became a lightning rod for division and debate. Telegraph wires hummed with frantic messages, carrying the shocking proclamation to every corner of the country. Operators worked tirelessly, their fingers flying over the keys as they transmitted the news to distant towns and cities. The telegraph, a marvel of modern technology, became the conduit for a nation's collective gasp. Messages poured in from all directions, each one echoing the disbelief and confusion that gripped the populace. Newspapers rushed to print special editions, their headlines screaming the unbelievable truth: "Lincoln embraces slavery." The presses clattered and roared, churning out copies that would be snatched up by eager hands. Newspaper boys, their voices hoarse from shouting, became the bearers of bad news, their cries of "Extra! Extra!" ringing through the streets. The printed word, once a source of enlightenment, now served to deepen the nation's divide.
In the North, where abolitionist sentiment had been steadily growing, the reaction was swift and furious. The news hit like a thunderclap, shattering the fragile hope that had been nurtured by years of struggle and sacrifice. Abolitionists who had dedicated their lives to the cause of freedom felt a profound sense of betrayal. Their anger was palpable, a seething undercurrent that threatened to erupt into violence. Outraged citizens took to the streets, denouncing Lincoln as a traitor and a hypocrite. Protest signs sprouted like weeds, each one a testament to the depth of their disillusionment. The air was thick with the sound of angry voices, each one demanding answers, each one seeking justice. The streets, once a place of commerce and community, became a battleground for the soul of the nation. How could the man who had so eloquently spoken out against slavery now propose its reinstatement? The question hung in the air, a specter that haunted every conversation. Lincoln, the great emancipator, had become an enigma, his motives inscrutable, his intentions opaque. The people, once united in their admiration, now found themselves divided by doubt and suspicion. The very foundation of their moral universe seemed to have crumbled. Families gathered around their hearths, their faces etched with worry, their hearts heavy with uncertainty. The abolitionist movement, once a beacon of hope, now seemed adrift, its leaders grappling with a sense of profound disillusionment. The future, once so bright, now seemed shrouded in darkness.
The South, on the other hand, greeted Lincoln's proposal with a mixture of astonishment and cautious optimism. The news spread quickly, carried by word of mouth and the ever-busy telegraph wires. In town squares and meeting halls, people gathered to discuss the implications of Lincoln's words. The initial reaction was one of disbelief, a sense that this must be some kind of trick or ploy. Confederate leaders, initially skeptical, saw a glimmer of hope in Lincoln's words. Could it be that the North, weary of war and bloodshed, was finally ready to negotiate? The possibility was tantalizing, a faint light at the end of a long and bloody tunnel. Yet there was also a sense of caution, a wariness born of years of conflict and mistrust. Could this be the olive branch they had been waiting for? A sign that the North was finally willing to negotiate a peaceful end to the war? The question lingered in the air, a fragile hope that seemed almost too good to be true. Leaders debated the merits of Lincoln's proposal, weighing the risks and rewards with careful consideration. The prospect of peace, once a distant dream, now seemed within reach. Or was it a cunning ploy, a desperate attempt to sow discord among the southern states? The suspicion was hard to shake, a shadow that loomed over every discussion. Could Lincoln be trusted? Or was this just another tactic in a long and brutal war? The leaders of the Confederacy found themselves at a crossroads, their path forward uncertain, their choices fraught with peril. The nation, once united in its struggle for independence, now found itself divided by doubt and suspicion.
The nation, already deeply divided by the war, found itself further torn apart by Lincoln's shocking proposal. This proposal, which aimed to bring an end to the conflict, was met with mixed reactions from different factions within the country. The Civil War had already caused immense suffering and loss, and Lincoln's plan was seen as a potential solution to the ongoing bloodshed. However, it also threatened to disrupt the delicate balance of power and ideals that had been fiercely defended by various groups. Abolitionists, who had long viewed Lincoln as a staunch ally in the fight against slavery, felt betrayed and abandoned. They had placed their hopes in Lincoln, believing that he would lead the nation towards a future free from the shackles of slavery. His proposal, however, seemed to compromise on the very principles they had fought so hard to uphold. The abolitionists had dedicated their lives to the cause, organizing rallies, protests, and meetings to demand the end of slavery. Now, they faced the harsh reality that their trusted leader might be willing to make concessions that could prolong the suffering of millions.
Frederick Douglass, a prominent abolitionist and former slave, publicly denounced Lincoln's proposal, his words dripping with disappointment and anger. Douglass had been a powerful voice in the abolitionist movement, using his eloquence and personal experiences to highlight the horrors of slavery. His condemnation of Lincoln's plan resonated deeply with those who had looked up to him as a symbol of hope and resilience. Douglass's speeches and writings had inspired many to join the fight against slavery, and his disapproval of Lincoln's proposal added fuel to the growing discontent among abolitionists.
Moderate Republicans, caught off guard by Lincoln's sudden shift, struggled to reconcile their belief in preserving the Union with their opposition to slavery. These politicians had supported Lincoln's efforts to maintain the unity of the nation while also advocating for the gradual abolition of slavery. Lincoln's proposal, which seemed to prioritize peace over the immediate end of slavery, left them in a difficult position. They had to weigh the potential benefits of ending the war against the moral imperative to abolish slavery. The debates among moderate Republicans were intense, as they grappled with the complexities of the situation and sought to find a path forward that aligned with their values. Many found themselves torn between their loyalty to Lincoln and their conscience. The internal conflict was palpable, as they tried to navigate the treacherous waters of political compromise and moral integrity. Some believed that supporting Lincoln's proposal was a necessary step to achieve a greater good, while others feared that it would undermine the progress they had made in the fight against slavery. The pressure to make the right decision weighed heavily on their shoulders, as they knew that their choices would have far-reaching consequences for the future of the nation. Some argued that Lincoln's proposal, however distasteful, was a necessary evil to prevent further bloodshed and preserve the nation. They believed that the immediate priority was to end the war and save lives, even if it meant making difficult compromises. These individuals saw the proposal as a pragmatic solution to a seemingly intractable problem. They hoped that by bringing an end to the conflict, the nation could begin the process of healing and rebuilding. The idea of sacrificing certain ideals for the greater good was a bitter pill to swallow, but they felt it was a price worth paying to achieve peace.
In the Confederacy, Lincoln's proposal sparked intense debate among Confederate leaders. The proposal was seen as a potential threat to their cause, but it also presented an opportunity to negotiate terms that could benefit the South. Confederate leaders were divided on how to respond, with some advocating for a hardline stance and others suggesting a more conciliatory approach. The discussions were heated, as they weighed the risks and rewards of engaging with Lincoln's plan. The future of the Confederacy hung in the balance, and the decisions made in these meetings would shape the course of the war and the fate of the Southern states. Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, remained deeply suspicious of Lincoln's motives. Davis had always viewed Lincoln as an adversary, and he was wary of any proposal that came from the Union leader. He believed that Lincoln's plan was a strategic move designed to weaken the Confederacy and force them into submission. Davis's skepticism was shared by many in the Confederate leadership, who saw the proposal as a sign of weakness from a faltering Union. They feared that accepting any terms from Lincoln would undermine their fight for independence and compromise their principles. He viewed the proposal as a sign of weakness, a desperate attempt by a faltering Union to divide the South and crush its rebellion. This perspective fueled the resolve of Confederate leaders to continue their struggle, believing that they could outlast the Union and achieve their goals. The idea that the Union was on the brink of collapse gave them hope and strengthened their determination to fight on. The Confederate leaders were committed to their cause, and they were willing to endure great hardships to secure their independence. Others, however, saw it as an opportunity to secure their independence and preserve their way of life. They believed that negotiating with Lincoln could lead to a peaceful resolution that would allow the South to maintain its autonomy and continue its traditions. These individuals argued that it was better to explore the possibility of a negotiated settlement rather than prolong the war and risk further devastation. The debate within the Confederacy was complex, with leaders and civilians alike grappling with the difficult choices before them. The future was uncertain, and the decisions made in this critical moment would shape the destiny of the nation.
The political fallout from Lincoln's Gettysburg Address was immediate and severe. In Congress, where the fragile balance of power had been holding the Union together by a thread, Lincoln's proposal ignited a firestorm of outrage.
Abolitionist lawmakers, led by the fiery Thaddeus Stevens, denounced Lincoln's proposal as a betrayal of the nation's founding principles and vowed to fight it with every fiber of their being.
Internationally, Lincoln's proposal was met with widespread condemnation. European powers, particularly Great Britain and France, who had been watching the Civil War with a mixture of fascination and horror, expressed their disgust at Lincoln's apparent willingness to sacrifice human freedom on the altar of political expediency. The moral high ground that the Union had enjoyed in the eyes of the world seemed to vanish overnight.